Welcome guys, gals and non-binary pals to this week's episode of Buffy Boys, your weekly retrospective on Buffy the Vampire Slayer from a queer, literary and feminist perspective. My name is Joel, I'm one of your hosts, and with me as always is my other lupine host.
Brian, how's it going?
Good, yeah, not too bad, how are you?
Lupine, am I?
Yeah, you have a quality of the wolf about you, I think.
I prefer Vulpine.
Vulpine, the quality of the...
Fox.
Yeah, no, I just want to say it. I do enjoy all those family, animal family names. Servine is deer, I think, as well. There's some cool ones in there.
Is it?
Yeah, I think so.
S08E07?
No, C-E-V. C-E-or-V. Don't get me to spell live on air.
Okay. I like Ursine.
Ursine's really
quite good. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so quality of wolf.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. We have come off of a wet and windy bank holiday weekend here in the Republic. And... I feel rested. My skin feels clear, and yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about some Buffy the Vampire Slayer as always.
Yeah, and I was like, for a second there, I was like, oh, what interesting things we watched recently, and we should talk about. And one of the things I was thinking of is, oh, we watched an interesting thing last night. What's it called? Angel. Yeah, we could talk about that. And I was like, wait, no, that's not how this goes.
Yeah, you're that's entering that part of your buffer because you actually watched it last night, and you're like, oh, I actually watched a thing last night.
Yep.
What I've been doing, which I really enjoyed over the weekend, is very me. Is I think we probably mentioned before the big list that we keep a list of the television we want to watch. We're going to watch. I've been keeping this list for several years. It's gone through various iterations, literally in a big black book, and for a long time I have kept a list of shows which I have started and abandoned at random points in my youth for reasons I don't understand anymore. And I'm now in a form of inexpensive therapy going back to finally finish a lot of them. So I watched like the end of Star Trek Enterprise, which ended in like 2005, and Blake's 7 and web therapy and all this kind of old stuff. So Star Wars Rebels, all these kind of things that and literally having to go back and Wikipedia when was it even broadcast, or a Stargate sequel that came, like TV movie that came out in 2008 and that kind of thing. But also if I wanted to watch it and for some reason didn't. So yeah, I've been absolutely blasting through some of that, and it's very
at literally 3x speed in most cases, right?
Look, the subtitles are wrong. Not a lot happens in some of these things. So I'm like, just get me to the juicy bits. The only way I'm going to be able to do it without ruining my life is to watch it faster. And I've been enjoying it. It's felt like a life hack.
I think I introduced you to that one, which was listening to your podcast at higher speed, and I regret it every day because every so often when I'm jumping in the shower and I turn on the Bluetooth speaker, because if you go into the shower and you don't have music playing, the demon thoughts can get to you so easily because you're naked and vulnerable. Except for me, I'm not naked and vulnerable because I usually wear my cut-off shorts or jean shorts to the shower, of course. But
you've totally gone lost in the weeds there, haven't you?
But every so often I'll connect to the Bluetooth speaker, or I'll turn on the Bluetooth speaker and I'll connect to your phone instead because you were using it last, and it'll just be and it is this unrecognizable jarble nonsense that vaguely resembles human voice, and that is what is in your ear at all times, often while we are having conversations. So,
sorry, I just need to pause something here. Sorry, what did you say?
Exactly. Okay.
But in terms of actual things, we are here to continue our ranking. We're getting very close to the cream, so to speak, of the crop, the ambrosia of the Buffy rankings. So in this episode, what bracket are we covering, Brian?
So in this episode, In this episode, we're ranking episodes 41 to 32. I keep messing this up. This is actually what we're doing. I think it's that. So it's only 10 episodes, which is kind of fun. And it's all great episodes. There's like literally no bad episodes here.
We're very much in the era of episodes whose title you recognize, I think. So that's gonna be fun. So we the 10.
You say that, but you asked me to repeat 5 times the same episode. You do not know how to take into account what Selfless is or what's my line.
it's just a little test for you, and you've been doing well so far.
Okay, that's good to know.
So we are going to be looking into that bracket shortly, but first, let's scoot over to the bronze and talk about what we've been imbibing culturally in the last week or so.
Yeah, so I think the same way that every gay on like Earth has been, the last week we watched all of Heartstopper. Mm-hmm. It is a very cute new TV show, super gay, based in England. It's on Netflix. It's a very speedy 8 episodes, mostly half-hour long episodes, and it's based on a web comic turned standard comic, I believe. And it is it's inspired just some of the most awful tweets, because it is about a young romance between two queer boys, and it's in a world where certainly not everyone is accepting, but it's closer to, you know, today's politics than it is to the politics of when we were growing up, certainly. And it's representing queer youth in such a warm, positive, hopeful way, in a way that people are now like, oh, what was your Heartstopper growing up? And people posting like, you know, oh, it was queer as folk when, you know, the 15-year-old gets rimmed by a 30-year-old and stuff like this.
Or very topically,
Willow for sure, yeah. One of the tweets making the rounds that me and Joe had a discussion about the other day was someone being like, oh, this is what the youth get now, and what I had was just scraps from Joss Whedon and Stephen Moffat growing up, which, I mean, the timeline differences between those two properties is bizarre, but whatever.
But anyway, we'll get into that in a second. But I will point out that, as you said, you know, every gay in the world isn't watching this show, and I watched it as well, because as you've made very clear, I can't include myself in that nomenclature, which is appropriate for this show, because Heartstopper is a very positive portrayal of a young bisexual man as well, a boy as well.
It's a spoiler, Joel. That's a spoiler.
No, I don't. I've never felt that someone's sexuality is a spoiler. I have a particular point about that, but discussing that as well and showing positive representation of that, and there's a trans girl in it as well who doesn't have a tragic storyline, and it's fundamentally all these politics and all these personal reasons that it's significant. It's just an incredibly joyful show, and it is fun to watch. It is heartwarming,
It's not unhard hitting either. It's like, you know, it has its moments of showing genuine hardship for these characters, and, you know, it's not glossy bubblegum. It is certainly has, you know, it's lighthearted, but it's not unrealistic. Yeah,
and I think importantly, it's pitched at the level of the demographic that it's about. You know, even though it's being massively consumed by, you know, queer people in their 20s and early 30s who, you know, have something that needs a bit of healing underneath there. It still is, I think, pitched very much at the demographic. And what I think is really, there's a lot of just like strong, positive role models and figures in it. But I also think that it is quite touching in its ability to show how men can have emotional vulnerability and complexity when they're young people, when they're not kind of squeezed by, you know, kind of the expectations of society. You know, there's a lot of, aside from just the representation, there's a lot of kindness and softness to it, which is really nice to see between men.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's I like, it's so funny because I think one of the odd topics that the queer community is kind of like settled on is like, oh, we sorted out the gay men and queer men's representation generally, and we need to now pump more people into the fold. And the second part I hugely agree with. We need to represent more people far better. I don't think we have even come close to nailing queer men and representation and things. It's few and far between that queer men are treated as like warm, genuine people in media. We're often comic foils. We're often like kind of like sad collections of stereotypes. Like this and Looking are really, for me, the two standout pieces of TV media over the last couple of years that have actually felt genuine in their representation of queer men. And Moonlight, stuff like that, but there's not a surplus of the content.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think Heartstopper is first, our recommendation here is it's short, it's a lot of fun to watch, it is so, I don't know, heartwarming.
It is.
Go watch it, it's fun. But in terms of a piece of content, you're absolutely right that it is still incredibly, I'm putting aside the fact that there's a representation of bisexuality in that, which I think is great, simply from the queer male angle. It's so rare to see that represented, and to feel yourself represented in a way which is equally not tragic. And I think that this is a complex issue, but that the thing about gay men being the I'm trying to think of a good way to put this, but almost like the least in need of support within the community might be a way to put it. That stereotype that we're discussing, issue.
Support or representation,
yeah, I think there's some invisibility of it coming from mainstream straight people thinking, as you say, that gay men are more or less sorted. Within the community, there's some vocal minorities, I think, a small number of bad actors who see gay men as kind of the villains as such, or like men first, I suppose, in terms of cis and oppressive and ignorant in that way, and I think that does overshadow a lot of the neutral what am I trying to say here? I think that does generate that situation from those kind of few ignorant people. And it absolutely is a situation that is there as a result. And funnily enough, there was something to this point which I was going to show you the other day, and I decided not to because it's going to piss you off.
Oh, what was that?
So there was I want to say the New York Times. Let's say it was the New York Times.
I saw this. The
gay man who was basically saying that. So basically, the thrust of it was that someone wrote in and was like, I'm a gay man, and hopefully that education is better for young people in future, and that there is more support, etc. So they can understand that just because they have the fleeting thought that they might be queer or not, doesn't mean they're part of the community. Being gay is something intrinsically from a very early age, and there's no questioning around it. So we need to get people, we need to get rid of this terrible statistic that like 25%, 21% of people are in the current generation,
Gen Z,
feel they may identify as part of the LGBT community, and the letter writer was saying that it really should get back to what it actually is, which is 6 or 7 people who know for certain that they are, or 6 or 7% of people.
Yeah.
And the tweet that was encapsulating it was a meme of basically it was L, B, and T with a spray bottle.
Yeah.
And gay was the cat, and like, no, shut up, gay people. Gay men, actually, specifically, really,
Yeah.
And I was like, it's very to that point. Anyway, I've fucking monologued here long enough, but,
No, like, I mean, for one thing, I think that kind of stuff, like, people are far quicker to see gay men as being represented by bad actors in that group, and will overlook kind of like tons of other people, which is not to suggest that like there isn't a huge amount of like sexual racism in gay men's circles, exclusionary kind of politics, and really problematic like issues around body representation and exclusion based on body types and stuff like this. Huge problems. But, we all agree that we don't see lesbians as being more turfy than other members of the community, even though people tend to try to represent that in straight media specifically. We've resisted that. We're like, queer people are like, no, we don't see lesbians as more turfy than anyone else in the community. That is fucking nonsense. But just because like the straight...
prone to turfism.
Exactly. Yeah. And what the issue there is that the straight media tends to try to represent lesbians as being singularly impacted by trans issues negatively, and it's like that's not the case. But thanks. And like I think we need to kind of like readjust some of those kind of like perspectives. Yeah. Anyway, this is all gone away.
But it's what came out of watching the show, And
Sure.
I just very briefly on that, I would say the oldest trick and the oldest and most surreptitious trick to divide minorities is to create artificial barriers.
So true.
The concept that, as you say, it's a very astute point that as if lesbians are singularly affected by issues positively or negatively around trans people or gender inclusion and all that. That gay men are this thing that can be boxed off and are somehow separate from the issues that affect other queer people, etc. And the whole point of queering something and the ideology behind that and the motivation behind it is to resist those kind of artificial barriers, you know. So it's very silly to think that way. Gay men who are the villains are bad people first, not gay first, essentially.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And like, you know, that's we don't see that. We don't try to prejudge people in that way in any other context. So like, I think it's smart to resist that.
And something that'll make you feel better about all that is watching Heartstopper. I will say the cast, who seem to be you know, some of them are maybe undeclared, but like a lot of queer people in the cast, queer young people, and they seem to be the best of friends on social media.
There was a photo that Joel found very touching, which was the lead actor, another actor in it who is not quite a lead but is a major character, and the two of them in a photograph delighted with Russell T Davies, which is wonderful, because I honestly think that Russell T Davies as a writer has a real interest in portraying queer youth as they are in a genuine way, and I think it's really positive, and it's just really nice to see those kind of generational connection.
And that's and that's to think that what Russell T Davies wrote too, like he's put a very fine point on it. He's still alive. Like, that feels like such long historic stuff, but like he is a contemporary now of these young people. Anyway, it's wonderful. So that's Heartstopper.
We had other things we're going to talk about. Let's not bother. Let's move on to the rankings.
Yeah, we recommend Heartstopper. So speaking of the heartwarming relationship. Speaking of gays getting their revenge on society, at number 41 we have Villains, season 6, episode 20. I was going to say, speaking of the heartwarming relationship between two queer men, here's our podcast, but you went a different direction with it, which I endorse.
Joel initially rated this episode 9.3 Warren skins out of 10, and
Brian rated it 9.0 wet lung sounds.
Sure did. Okay,
so we've danced around this arc for Bag Willow. This is one lesbian who is a villain, but this is the sharp point of this arc. Essentially, this is where things go dark in the interaction between the classic murder of Warren, essentially. Yeah.
So you really advocated for this episode. You felt like this episode really represents the evil Willow, Dark Willow arc, and its culmination, and a positive place that it culminates, because the next two episodes are reasonably weak. I think we both agreed. I think we ranked them pretty low on the basis, but this episode has like so many good elements. You have Buffy trying to protect the trio. You have, like, you know, Warren maintaining his misogyny to the end. You have Willow, you know, fully going dark and being that menacing, terrifying character that she is as Dark Willow. And then the flaying, which is it's definitely the top 5 most striking images of the show.
No, absolutely. So I think if you remember anything from the Evil Willow arc, it's this episode for the most part. Like, this is where probably a lot of those seeings come from. I think it has to work for Willow's arc for really this whole season, and also her recovery in early season 7 to work, and I think it does. I think it's a really deft relationship between Warren and Willow in this, because Warren is, you know, arguably from the show's perspective doesn't deserve to die, but is incredibly hateful and misogynistic, and and literally up to when he's tied up and he is Willow is summoning the visions of women he's killed before and all that kind of stuff. It presents a really challenging grey area to the audience, and the image of Willow flaying Warren is so indelibly like there is no returning from this point, and that is I think the shock that is necessary to really like make you afraid for what's going to happen. Yeah.
No, it's a truly impactful episode. It's, I think, you know, it does it justify season 6's approach to Willow as a character? Maybe not. Does it like justify Tara's death? No, not really. But it is an episode of TV that is unforgettable, highly thrilling. Like, it's a scary episode. It's maybe the scariest episode of Buffy.
Yeah, and it was one of those episodes, again, at the time, this is not an experience you would have had, where I was like, I might be too young to watch this.
What is the scariest episode of Buffy? Probably Hush. Like, I mean, obviously, traditionally Hush. Like, undoubtedly the best horror episode.
Yeah, it depends on what scares you, realistically. I think the Trapped in the House Halloween episode.
Oh, really?
So I think for an episode to be scary, there has to be a part of your brain that kind of imagines, oh my God, what if this was actually happening to me? And there's something about being trapped in the house that I found quite disturbing. Obviously, the windows disappearing in that episode, and some of the gore, etc. Hush. I think Helpless as well.
It's going to say Helpless, yeah. Exactly
where Buffy is depowered.
I mean, maybe what you call it? I can never. Slayer Interrupted. Normal Again, possibly up there. Like, that's a genuinely scary episode. Yeah. I would say the body, the last part of the body, is a frightening sequence, and it's also like it's quite horror. Anyway, I think Villains is up there in terms of the horror episodes. Next up, at number 40, we have Earshot, season 3, episode 18. And Joel initially rated this 9.5 bongs filled with neon demon blood. And
Brian rated it 9.2 four-legged demons.
No, that was a pretty disappointing one by me, I think.
I was going to say, I think you're having a chill day that day.
Yeah.
So Earshot is the episode where Buffy is imbued with the telepathic capacity of a mouthless demon race. So she can hear people's thoughts. And there is initially I suppose high comedy around this, and then leading to something much more serious when she overhears that someone is going to murder in the school. It turns out he multiple someones, one of whom is Jonathan, the other is a stuntman dressed up as a lunch lady.
So no, Jonathan isn't she doesn't overhear Jonathan's thoughts at all, and he's not planning on killing anyone except for himself.
Sure, but there's an event happening, so it gets split. She can't tell which is the actual crisis she has to deal with. So I think this is personally, I think this is a great concept episode of Buffy, because what Buffy does, which is reasonably unique in these kind of shows, is it really when there's a concept of the week episode, it's used to empower the main cast to be something different. Like Buffy is often like Buffy but variant for some reason, like the character Buffy. I think that this is a really good way for Sarah Michelle Gellar to kind of get under everyone's skin a little bit.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think it, as an episode, it threads the needle really well, because like it's the comedy parts are really comedic, the dark part is really dark, and it doesn't feel like either of those are misaligned. As Buffy goes to find Jonathan and threatens him, and he's like, "No, I'm but to kill myself, not anyone else." It's a really dark moment. It's very sad. It's tinged by, of course, this episode having intended to air like in the weeks after Columbine massacre, which is really upsetting. But it's a considerate and warming moment that Buffy does help Jonathan that moment. While Xander is fighting with the lunch lady at the same time. Like it's an interesting one. It also feels like genuinely despairing that Buffy can't get these thoughts out of her head and is losing her mind to it. But at the same time, you have stuff like she's like reading Xander's thoughts, and Xander's thoughts are he's like, "God, don't think about sex, don't think about sex. Yeah. Oh my God, I'm doing it again. She can hear, etc." Oz's thoughts are like incredibly cool. He's like, if Buffy can hear my thoughts, does that mean that I am Buffy? Is Buffy me? Does she? If I don't have this, who am I? What am I? This is incredibly existential. And best of Cordelia, when she reads Cordelia's thoughts are just exactly what she says. Yeah, which is perfect.
It's a good bit. So I think it's memorable for that. And I also the stuff with Jonathan really stands out to me, because it's obviously a very dark scene, and while I don't think it's a bad scene, it kind of exists in limbo compared to the rest of the show, because there's just a lot of weirdness about it. It's like, where is this bell tower? why was he using a sniper rifle to potentially kill himself? Does this fit in with Jonathan's character before or after? Do you know what I mean? It's weird. It's this weird limbo. But yeah, I think overall, and then obviously the fight scene, which we repeatedly meme to each other, is that it's very visible that the lunch lady is just a stocky man, a stunk man at various points during the fight. And that's that kind of jank that keeps me coming back to Buffy.
There's the moment at the end of the episode where Buffy tells Giles that she found out that he had sex with Joyce from in Bank Candy because of reading his thoughts, and he walks into a tree, which is really good. Okay, next up we have episode at number 39. We have Lover's Walk, season 3, episode 8, and Joel initially rated this 9 dead small magic business owners.
As in the owners of a small magic business. And Brian rated it 9.2 wooden spoons.
Yeah, so this is the episode where Spike comes back in season 3. I think it's the only Spike episode.
He's been dumped by Drusilla and he's heartbroken and forlorn.
And he wants Willow to make a potion to bring him back, or is it like to punish her or bring her back, basically? And yeah, I think it's just a love spell, and it means that Willow and
I think it might be a delusting spell, so he no longer wants.
No, I just checked there. It's a love spell apparently for Drusilla. So he kidnaps Willow and Xander. Oz and Cordelia are looking for them, and I think Buffy and Angel have to fight other people as well. But it's just like it's a great like weird episode of messy interpersonal stuff where Spike tells Buffy and Angel that they're not going to make it, and it's a kind of a weird truth-telling moment for him because of course that's what Spike does. And most importantly, obviously, Cordelia and Oz find Willow and Xander kissing finally, because like it's in a moment that's been
an ongoing arc.
And Cordelia falls through the stairs, impaling herself on a spike. Well, no, she gets impaled on a spike, and which is incredibly upsetting. I remember watching that for the first time and thinking, have I forgotten that? And I was like, oh my god, in season 4 and 5, Cordelia is not in this, so maybe she dies. It ends Xander and Cordelia's relationship forever.
I really forget how much the Willow and Xander, and then Xander and Cordelia like relationship is such a long arc on the show. And there's lots of scenes about it. So it's maybe the episode that reintroduces Spike as this sows the seeds really of Spike being a long-term character, I think, because he is, as he's in his truth-telling mode. He has a number of scenes with like the relationship with Joyce develops here as well. It's like,
his first comedic episode. Yeah,
he's like, oh, remember we met last year? You hit me with the head and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And he's like behind her going, grr, while Buffy's, while someone's watching him. Or I think it might be Buffy. So I think it's great because it introduces like Spike in a different context. And yeah, the vulnerability of Cordelia is really through this episode as well, which I think is really, really valuable. But it's a surprisingly like effective culmination of a lot of that interpersonal stuff, which on so many shows can be so saccharine and like I don't care about these like straight people like hiding from each other, etc. But in this it actually works out. I think you get a real teenage vulnerability as well in this arc that grounds it in them not necessarily being 30-year-olds playing these characters. Yeah,
absolutely. No, it's a good episode. I like it. I'm excited for in a year or two's time to sit back and rewatch seasons 2 and 3 specifically. I think it's gonna be a real treat. And this is one of the episodes I'll enjoy watching. Okay, next up at number 38 we have What's My Line Part 1, season 2, episode 9, and Joel initially rated this 7.8 maggots.
And Brian rated it 8.8 airborne toxic events.
So in recording this episode for the podcast back in the day, I think what we really talked about most importantly, because this is when I was doing lots of research and had lots of good essays to read, because there were lots of good essays written about season 2 and 3, and there aren't really about the later seasons, was Kendra's appearance in this episode, which actually takes up a reasonably small amount of the episode because it's it's later on in the episode that she actually she appears. But
the career is fair in this episode.
It is, yeah. But we talked a lot about the racism of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and the absolute lack of any race representations, how the ones that are the few and far between representations that they do exist tend to end up like this, where you have Kendra killed for no reason
and portrayed very stereotypically in some ways,
very stereotypically, absolutely, all that kind of stuff. I think it was The Tragic Mulatta was the name of the essay, or I think if it's not, and I've just come out of that with
I think that's accurate, and that is a term in this kind of post-colonial theory as well.
It's so I think that was why you certainly gave it 7.8. Ultimately, the episode is actually great. It's so much fun. You have the trio of assassins coming to kill Buffy.
It's like the Warriors Tree or something like that. Yeah.
Gosh, I can't remember what they're called. I think
one is a cop.
Yep.
And one has is made of maggots.
One is made of maggots, and
the third has knife for hands. Is
the third one? Oh, I'm not sure if he has knife for hands, but he comes to attack her at the ice rink.
Yeah.
I can't remember what was special about him. I think he might just been a strong big guy.
I think he was a vampire with knife for hands.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I could be making that up.
But it's a great episode. I would say
he gets decapitated with the ice skates. I remember that.
He does. I would say it's like, one of the it's one of the early great episodes of season 2 of Buffy. It's a lot of fun, and
it also introduces the concept of that there can be, in this instance, there can be two Slayers at the same time, which is actually quite a twist, because the very premise of the show rebukes that concept. So to be able to have that interaction, I think, is so compelling.
Yeah. Okay, and it's Spike calls them, and it's the Order of Taraka.
Sounds delicious.
Yeah, it does. So it's I don't think we've already rated What's My Line Part 2, did we? No, What's My Line Part 2 is a little bit further down, which is exciting. But for this episode, like, it's not as good as the second part, in which you actually see the attacks by the assassins. It's real classic Buffy stuff. It's setting all that up, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I think it's you have your great slightly VHS effect, monsters of the week, but you have your man turning into the maggot, because obviously a really, there's 3 of them, and each of them have a special thing, and they each have different plans and that kind of stuff, and I think the kicker is that they assume that Kendra, I think, potentially is the third, but it's actually just a cop.
Yeah, no, that's so funny. Yeah, and it's good. I really like this episode, and I really like these 2 episodes. Yeah, and Angel's attacked by Kendra and locked in the library
with a countdown timer, basically.
Yeah, and it's all great. Like the ending where she says, like, my name is Kendra, I'm the vampire slayer, and I can do that because her accent is made up. I am not taking the piss out of any accents there. That accent does not exist.
Yeah, that's true. That is a iconically, I think, imitable performance,
because it's not Jamaican. It is not like there's
it's Kendra accent.
It's Kendra accent and nothing else. It's a good episode. I really like it. Not as good as the second part. Okay, next up at number 37 we have Bewitched, Bothered and Bewildered, season 2, episode 16. And Joel initially rated this 8.8 Buffy Rats.
And Brian rated it 8.6 Roofy Spirits ?
Yeah, I'm not even sure where I was going with that, but I suppose, like, it is pretty roofy-ish, the episode, like, as a whole.
100%. There's all kinds of consensual issues in this, and we get to that, but Buffy's like, oh, Xander, you're such a good person for not taking advantage of me. Yeah. It's kind of the kicker, but anyway, go on.
So this is an episode, it's Xander centric. It's a Buffy Light episode as well. Mm-hmm. I think
she was filming I Know What You Did Last Summer or something like
exactly,
that.
Exactly, yeah. It is tons of fun. It is one of the most fun episodes of season 2 of Buffy, I would say. It is deeply comedic. So the premise is that Xander is, I think Cordelia is, like, not showing him as much attention as he wants or something. Is that what it is? And he has, or she's kind of like, I think they're kind of like, fighting all the time because she doesn't want to be seen with him. So he goes to Amy to do a spell on Cordelia to have her fall in love with him so that he can dump her, essentially. And what follows is that every woman in Sunnydale except for Cordelia is is influenced by this spell to fall in love with Xander. They all start
including Buffy and Drusilla.
Buffy and Drusilla, most importantly Joyce, and most sadly Willow. But so they all follow Xander and try to attack him with axes and stuff because, like, you know, if I can't have him, then no one can. He ends up in a basement with Cordelia, who has also come under the ire of all these women for not loving Xander enough. And they're about to be, like, axed to death while they reverse the love spell. It's a great episode. It's really funny. It has some actually really sad, touching moments. Willow in the episode, like, you know, who is actually in love with Xander and cannot have him, and he knows this, is like deeply upset about the whole thing, and then after everything doesn't forgive him, which I think is kind of appropriate. Yeah, but it's a great episode. And
there's two iconic scenes. One is however you want to interpret the consent politics of it, but the whole thing about Buffy, like, in her lingerie trying to seduce
Xander basically saying, I wanted it for so long, but obviously I can't.
I'm being turned into a rat.
There's a great moment where Oz comes up to Xander and hits him, and he's like, I'm not sure what you've done to Willow, but I was on the phone to her for ages last night and she was very upset, and I got the very strong urge to come punch you, and it's a very satisfying moment.
And the episode actually ends with you know, when situations reset, that Cordelia's with the Cordex and they're making fun of Xander, and she tells them to get lost and goes with Xander,
and she calls them all sheep.
And it's just like, he never deserved her, realistically. No. But it's a strong Cordelia episode as well.
It's a really strong Cordelia episode. It's unfortunately as close as we get to a Cordelia centric episode in these in season 2 or season 1, but it's really good. Do you think that Xander was upset when Cordelia died?
Yes.
Not enough though.
Well, yeah, because I think, wasn't he in Russia at that point or something?
Yeah, and probably Dawn at that point.
Yeah, he probably was concerned about what it meant for him.
Yeah,
ultimately.
So yeah. Okay, so and Buffy turns into a rat as well for a while because Amy is very jealous of her, and she's actually, like, it is one of the sexiest anyone's ever looked is Buffy in this episode, in just like mostly just a leather coat, right? Yeah. And dancing for Xander.
Raincoat, maybe, yeah.
Raincoat. She looks incredible. I say this all the time. I really hope that Sarah Michelle Gellar and a lot of the people on the show look back on this and think, God, I was so fucking hot.
Yeah, 100%.
And still am. Okay, next up at number 36, we have Homecoming, season 3, episode 5. And Joel rated this 9.8 rival podcasts.
Brian rated it 8.3 ice packs to shrink my pores.
I do need some of those, yeah.
So this is the Slayer Fest episode of Buffy.
Do you stand by 9.8? As in, did you do that mostly as a reference? Slayer Fest 98. I
must have done it as a reference to Slayer Fest 98, yeah. That sounds like something I would do. I do think it's a very good episode, though. I think it's a great combination of high school drama plus premise. So you have Mr. Trick has convened various assassins to try and take out the Slayer. They're trapped up in the woods. Cordelia and Buffy are having this rivalry on the way to homecoming. They're both in their homecoming dresses. And you have the actual drama of what's happening back in the high school while they're trying to get to it and trying to defeat the various assassins. There's like the fucking... The German man, who I'm actually thinking now that in my brain, I'm thinking he might be in Seinfeld, you know, the snobby guy that Elaine works for. I think the man who directs the two soldiers,
I believe it, yeah.
I think might be him. You have Camden Toy there throwing knives out of his arms.
Is that Camden Toy?
Oh, no, sorry, not Camden Toy. It's the guy who directed the John Wick movies.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. You have the Gorch brothers, I think, are in this one as well. Gulch.
I can't remember, but yes, you do.
Yeah, the American vampires, and obviously Mr. Trick orchestrating the whole thing. The whole thing's delivered over VHS tape. You know, it is very of the 90s, yeah. Mm-hmm. And Cordelia has a lot of kick-ass moments in it as well.
Yep. It's a lot of fun. And at the end, do you have... This is also... No, sorry, I was going to say this is the episode with Tucker Wells, but actually, no, that's Homecoming. So, never mind. But, sorry, no, that's the prom. Right? It was actually the Tucker Wells episode. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I don't rate this episode as highly as you do, but you rate it very highly. I think this episode is a little clunky at times and a lot of fun. I think it takes up too much time kind of like going from place to place. The beginning of the episode where Buffy and Cordelia are fighting for Homecoming Queen, and Buffy is like failing miserably, is very funny. And then at the end when neither of them win anyway, the Homecoming Queen, excellent.
Yeah, if you bear in mind that by this point that Faith is here already as well, so they mistake Cordelia for the second Slayer.
Yeah.
And yet at the end, it's like, we have a shock announcement between Buffy and Cordelia. Same as both of them. It's like, we have a tie between two winners. And it's like, I'm going to look it up now. It is Michelle Blake and Holly Charleston.
And just the two of them, like, blank face at the end.
It's a good bit, yeah.
Pretty great.
But yeah, and obviously the nom de guerre of our sister podcast, Slayer Fest 98, came from this episode as well.
Yeah, great. Okay. Next up at number 35, we have I Was Made to Love You. Season 5, episode 15, and Joe initially rated this 9.4 brain aneurysms.
And Brian rated it 8.8 Randy sex kittens.
I think this is one of our most unusual rankings. Having this so high, I think this is wonderful. I think it is bizarre that this is the episode that leads into the body.
Which episode is this, Brian?
This is the episode where Warren is introduced. He has made a sex robot who...
April, I want to say.
April, who he has abandoned in Sunnydale and who is wandering around doing damage to people, and eventually like, yeah, they have to get Warren to find out what's going on there. It's really sad. The whole point of it is that she ends up just like... She's programmed to do this. She has no option, but she clearly has a degree of personality and selfhood and conception of self, and she kind of just like, her batteries just run out, and it's sad and sucks.
Yeah, it's
it was intended to be Britney Spears in the role.
Yeah, I can see that. So I think that we took this positively because if we look at it from a thematic point of view, this has to have strength in terms of introducing the Warren character, the Warren's misogyny, the other side. I think we're far enough into the show by this point that you can have some of the less positive variables that influence feminism and women's lives, and this is absolutely one of them. Men like Warren, he is always portrayed incredibly small through this, but incredibly capable of negative impact. And it's a science fiction episode ultimately, but also that the dialogue, which is always usefully centered between two women, which is Buffy and April, the robot, is very deft, and the portrayal of April is as a very sungy character who is struggling against the programming and has this very tragic end. Has actually quite a lot of nuance to it.
Yeah, and it speaks a lot to the issues that are going to come up in season 6 around like both obviously the nerd stuff and the misogyny there, and also the selfhood stuff. April's struggle of having a purpose which is harming her and that she doesn't really have a choice about, and also not knowing who she is and trying to determine who she is it really reflects Buffy's struggles in season 6 like quite a lot, which is really fascinating. And then I think one of like the saddest elements of the episodes is obviously that Joyce is having a great time. She goes out on a date with a man who seems really nice. He drops her flowers, and that's what Buffy finds when she comes home, and he's like, I think what her line is like, this is soon after what's his name, Riley has left, and Buffy sees the flowers from the guy with a note saying that he really enjoyed his date with Joyce, and she's saying like, some guys are still doing it right, and then she finds Joyce's body. It's a weird lead up to the most important episode of the show, most likely, but it's like... Yeah, actually, it is the end of this episode she finds. Yeah, she finds Joyce's body. So I think we have to include that as part of the rating as well. Like, as a kicker, like that is the end of the episode. Yeah, and I think it like if that happened at the end of a otherwise bad episode, it'd be fine. I think it would still really work. But I think this comes at the end of a really good episode that gets overlooked because of the context that it's in. So yeah, I really like this episode. I think it's really, really good. And I think it's kind of... That's why Rage could bring aneurysms. Oh, that makes sense. Okay. I think it's a lot of the great points about Buffy are in this episode. It's funny. It is like, it's funny. It is weird. It talks about misogyny and has a weird format breaking thing at the end of the episode. Sarah Michelle Gellar saying mommy at the end of the episode. Oh, heartbreaking. Straight to the limbic system there. Yeah. Okay. Next up at number 34, we have Selfless, Season 7, Episode 5. Joel initially rated this 9.0, spider puppet interior jaws.
And Brian rated it 9.2, Wuglaw transmogrific spells.
I don't know
if you say so. So we watched this not too long ago. So this is season 7, the Anya-centric episode where the whole vengeance demon thing just goes a little bit too far, and she viciously murders a whole college dorm full of boys. And
vicious is the right word for it. She has some terrifying spiders come in to rip them to shreds, and a girl witnesses it. They have essentially made fun of this girl. I think they asked her there on a date and then dumped her specifically, and this girl has wished to Anya for them to all be taken care of, essentially.
And to know what it would feel like to have their hearts ripped out.
Yes, Jesus. This episode is great for a few different reasons. For one, it is by far the greatest Anya episode out of only 2 or 3, realistically.
Anya-centric episodes, yeah.
I think Emma Caulfield does an incredible job in this episode throughout, going from ditzy, funny, lighthearted to incredibly serious, incredibly dark.
It's quite traumatized as well.
Deeply traumatized, clearly. The scene where Buffy eventually ends up stabbing Anya, and that cuts to break, and then when you come back from break, you have Anya singing a song cut from Once More With Feeling, where she's singing like I'm Mrs. Xander Harris, essentially.
Was it cut or was it
no
shot to be?
It was shot for this episode.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting at all that it was like cut content from that.
But it was set during, essentially.
Set during. And I like format breaking episodes of Buffy. I really like that as a general concept. It really works here, where you have her singing a really high note and then it going immediately to her looking down and seeing a sword through her. And apart from that, you have like a very strong moment of, like the Buffy stuff in this episode is really strong. Buffy kind of trying to figure out what is she going to do about Anya, given that she is
having to put her down, essentially.
Yeah, having to put her down, for sure. And the solution is, of course, that Anya takes it all back, and the Hoffren reverses the spell, and Anya is convinced that she is going to be killed for it, and that's going to be the price that she pays for it. And instead, they summon Halfrick, who gets killed instead. It's a very upsetting episode. It's really good. It's grim. It's surprising and scary. I think it's far and away one of the best episodes of season 7.
Yeah, it's absolutely one of the most memorable episodes. It's again very horrific. The spider thing, I remember, if I remember correctly, I was particularly like, this is cool, and we only see it for like 2 seconds.
Yeah, it was really cool.
And you need to, on Buffy, for the tone of the show, to occasionally remind the audience this is a very actually dangerous world they live in, not a funny dangerous world. It's like terrible things happen here and people cry in closets because of it, you know. I think we had some discussion about why does Buffy decide this way with Anya when she's decided differently before, and that's contextual to the episode as well. Xander raises the same question, and so I think it really adds to the idea, even for this season, of what Buffy's burden is as a leader, and how she has to make those decisions and live with them, where everyone in the show has to do it maybe once or twice, and she has to do it every damn week, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. So, no, it's strong and it's powerful and it's impactful. Okay, next up at number 33, we have Halloween, Season 2, Episode 6. And Joe initially rated this 9.2 thirsty wigs.
One of my classic ratings, I think. And Brian rated it 8.7 actual felines.
I don't remember what that was about.
It's because Cordelia is dressed in a cat outfit from some other store, and she's worried she's going to be turning into an actual cat.
Oh, that's kind of funny.
So this is the classic Halloween episode with Ethan Rain. So I say Ethan Peck, that's a different person. Ethan Rain comes to town with a statue of Janice, sets up a Halloween store, everyone buys their costumes from there, and everyone turns into, by and large, who they've dressed up as. And we have Xander becomes a military man. Buffy tries to dress up like what she thinks Angel must be into because he's from the past, and dresses up as a extra from Bridgerton or whatever. And Willow dresses up like a ghost and dies.
He dresses up as a ghost and dies, but looks incredible.
Yeah, and has like a sluggy outfit on underneath it. Yeah. So like what to say about Halloween. It is so foundational for the show. It's a little underproduced compared to later episodes. Like, it does look very early season 2, but it creates the concept of the Halloween episode. It's a great concept episode.
It introduces Ethan Rain.
Who,
or does it? It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah. Because there's no way he was in it earlier than this.
Yeah. Okay.
And it uses all of these transformations as a way to explore the characters' motivations and personalities further. And it actually has this weird, long impact on the show because Xander uses his military knowledge, I think, right up until maybe season 7, actually.
I believe it, yeah.
Just to give him something to do in certain episodes. And yeah, it's a combination of funny, it's a great threat because you have, this is the Superman problem. It's like, if you have someone like Buffy, how do you realistically put her in danger episode to episode? And it is, her not remembering who she is a good way to do that. Yeah.
I think it's one of the early maybe the earliest examples of Sarah Michelle Gellar doing a different Buffy. And I love when as we said in these rankings before, I love when Sarah Michelle Gellar does alternate Buffys. In this, she's like, scared and alone, but also still quite brave, which is kind of cool. And like it's one of the earliest Willow-centric episodes, and it's really good for that. It's a really good Willow episode. She's very strong. She's very cool. Oz sees her walking across the road it's one of my favorite outfits from Buffy, full stop, which is Willow as a dead person walking around in her skimpy clothes. She looks incredible. Oz sees her and says, "Who's that girl?"
Yeah.
It's iconic.
And the concept of the little kids and the demon masks becoming tiny demons,
oh, great!
It makes Sunnydale feel scary. You actually do feel like that they're running from house to house. I just think it has a good horror to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and last for this episode, at number 32, we have I Only Have Eyes for You, Season 2, Episode 19. Joel initially rated this 9.1 scapulas.
And Brian rated it 9.0 low-life vegans.
Yep. So this is the episode where there are two ghosts who have lived who've gone to Sunnydale High, a teacher and a student, one teacher and her student who's an underage boy. Well, no, I'm not even sure he's underage, but he's a student, certainly. He kills her. He shoots her in a fit of passion, and this scene is being reenacted by their ghosts through the conduit bodies of different people in Sunnydale High over 3 or 4 times through the episode, culminating in Buffy and Angel being drawn to the school where it's been like locked down by mystical forces, essentially.
Yeah.
And them replaying it with Angel as the teacher who's a woman, and Buffy playing the angry boy, and in doing so are able to free the ghosts because they are
because Angel, when he gets shot, is able to survive
and comfort
and give the opportunity for the ghosts to play out the ending of that. And crucially, it's Angelus at this point in the arc.
Angelus, yeah.
So we're deep in the threat of Angelus. He comes to school, I think potentially to kill Buffy, in the sense like thinking she's vulnerable, ends up having to play at this impassioned love scene with his sworn enemy now, and as soon as the spell breaks is disgusted and runs away. So this is a great episode. It is a folkloric horror ghost story. It is
so inventive.
Yeah, it's very creative. It really uses the setting. There's some great actual horrific jump scares in it. There's a real the Scoobies investigate what happened here. Old yearbooks.
Whenever the Scoobies go through microfiche, I live.
Absolutely. It's a great opportunity to explore. Like I think you write backwards from the scene with Angelus and Buffy at the end, where exploring their now broken love for each other through the lens of this other doomed pair, which and the implication being that they won't have this happy ending in the way that these ghosts have had, essentially.
And it's also it's foreshadowing the fact that Buffy does kill Angel at the end of the season, and he does have a moment at the end of realizing it's her. Very sad.
Really? That happens.
It's also it's great gender wise.
Yeah.
You know, it's fascinating gender play in a way that is never actually misogynistic, which is so common in these situations. David Boreanaz does a great job of playing a playing a woman in that scene in a way that, you know, I think a lot of actors would overplay or would
Play
make
for laughs or something.
play
like
for laughs, or would make like iron out like the vulnerability of it. He portrays a genuine vulnerability in the moment. It's really fascinating. Yeah, I really like it.
Yeah, I think it's it might even be a good episode to show people if you want to show them what, like, a good Buffy episode. You know?
Like, yeah, it's just you say that about literally like every episode about Buffy.
I don't. I really don't. I don't think there's very few episodes we discussed today that I would do that for. But I think this is there's something about these slightly standalone like blocks of the week that also show great performances and imply the wider story that I think are really representative of the strength of Buffy. And like I think this episode has to remind us other shows were not doing this kind of stuff.
They really weren't.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think that's all the rankings we have to do today.
Yeah. So what are we on to next week?
So next week we are on number 31 to 22. So another 10 episodes. And then we're into top 20 after that, which is really exciting.
Yes, that's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. If you have any predictions about what our like top like 5 are going to be, what your top 5 are going to be, let us know. Send us a tweet, send us an email. We want to hear about it.
If you have an unusual top 5 or top 1, I'd love to hear that as well.
Exactly. Yeah, and tell us what you think ours are going to be. I think there are some really obvious answers. I think we probably have said before what our number 1 is going to be ultimately.
But has it stayed the same?
Has it stayed the same? We'll find out. Okay. Let's move on to the Cordelia Chase.
Yeah, absolutely. So over on the Cordelia...
It feels bad to call it Cordelia Chase now.
Yeah. Cordelia Chased.
Yeah, the Cordelia Chased. Okay.
Over on the Cordelia Chased, we watched 2 episodes of Angel this week even. Why We Fight and Smile Time. Why We Fight is a kind of interesting episode lore-wise and character-wise that doesn't necessarily live up to its potential, but has some interesting details to it. So essentially, we have a young man comes to the Wolf and Hart offices, breaks in, says some cryptic stuff about wanting to see Angel, ties up Gung, Fred, and Wesley with piano wire in such a position that if they're jostled on these chairs in the lobby, they'll be decapitated, and it goes to confront Angel. That everything I've said there is minutely sliced and played out over the course of the 40 minutes in between the flashback, which is the meat of the actual story, which is essentially to during World War II, that Angel, who was ensouled but not yet giving up on humanity but not doing anything with his time necessarily, is captured by the US government, a department called the Demon Research Initiative, which is implied to be a predecessor of the Initiative from season 4 of Buffy, because there is a German submarine that has been captured with some of their crew on board, and something dangerous is on board, and the only person who can get down alive to infiltrate and deal with it is Angel, and they've heard about vampires, etc., so they get him to do it. We go into the sub, we find out that what the Germans have captured is 3 vampires, which include a Nosferatu like old ancient vampire called the Prince of Lies, played by Camden Toy in a voiced role, and Camden Toy played the Gentleman in Hush, played the Narrow Gentleman in Hush, pardon me, Narrow, all the Uber vamps, etc. So that kind of character, a Russian vampire from kind of the Rasputin era called Nestroyev, I want to say, who lives about 40 seconds, and then
who mentions that he was
Rasputin's lover. Yeah. Odd thing to throw away. And then the third vampire in this Nazi submarine is Spike, who, what a coincidence, like someone who happened to run into the one time Angel and Spike encountered each other after, Angelus left and before, school hard or whatever, happens to come to Wolf and Hart while Spike is also, in the show. Anyway. And then the kicker is that this young American submarinist sailor gets sired by past Angel to allow them to get the boat to land, and becomes a vampire, but never really finds his purpose. He does all the horrible vampire things, but he never really gets the zeal out of it, and he thinks it's because Angel was ensouled when he bit him, and he's come there to be for suicide by CEO. Basically, he wants Angel to kill him because he's never really been satisfied.
No, doesn't he say like put me to work? Is like,
he says give me a mission, chief, but like really, like he puts himself in a position where he's holding the stake. He's obviously gonna get killed. He's like, you know, he wants a way out. It's kind of the thing they're trying to communicate here. And he needs it to be Angel because he's been defined by Angel essentially. So
some really questionable decisions in this one. You have Spike in a Nazi uniform wearing a literal swastika with bizarre, like for some reason, black hair, which is not a color his hair naturally is. So he went around dyeing it black for a while.
Yeah, in the 40s. Yeah.
If you say so.
So I think there's an interesting note to the premise, and I think that the guy who plays Sam Lawson, who is the agent provocateur here, really tries to imbue it with this kind of Whedon-esque. You know, I think Whedon did a similar thing in Firefly when your man who plays Knox comes back for that one episode, kind of the person from the war who comes back to try and define the characters in the present day, etc. And I think trying to introduce what was Angel and Spike doing during this time period and use that more effectively, like I like them trying to do that. There's some interesting vampire bits here. There's a classic kind of Nazi occultism and vampires and trying to use them, etc. It doesn't really ignite, I think, at any point. I think I don't really know why that is. I don't think any one part is particularly poor. It's almost like this story would need to be played out over a little bit longer period of time. Because what actually happens in the present day in between the flashback is like minutes pass in the interaction. And Angel, I think, is weirdly completely unsympathetic. You know, I understand why he was in the past because he was kind of disillusioned at the time. But present day Angel was really also like, go get fucked, you know, in a way that didn't really make sense for the character. So yeah, I don't know. What did you think of it otherwise?
Yeah, I thought it didn't really go anywhere. I didn't enjoy it a huge amount. And I think it was a well acted, visually enjoyable episode. But like, I don't know. I think that someone came along with this pitch for this episode and was like, oh, we could do a weird thing where we find out what Angel did during World War II. And like to that I say, like, why bother? It didn't add anything to anything. Didn't like it.
So I do think Spike was funny in the past, even though he had absolutely no reason to be on the boat. And I think it introduces a level of complication to the continuity of School Hard as well.
Yeah, it does.
The Prince of Lies, funny character, classic kind of Joss Whedon funny character. I like the general idea of it and the general pathos it implies. It just wasn't actually present in the episode ultimately. And we also, I think we kind of did this before with Jeremy Renner as well.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
So that was bad too. I would probably give this like maybe a 5 failed feminist gestures.
Yeah, I was gonna go 6 just to be generous, but 5.
It's not even necessarily a bad episode. It's just kind of like not a particularly enjoyable, like fun episode.
It's also in the midst of quite a lot of good episodes.
Yeah. Speaking of, next up is Smile Time, which is the one where Angel gets turned into a puppet.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of things to this. Probably one of the most famous episodes of Angel. One of the best, I think, high concept episodes of Buffy and Angel verse.
It's one of the most concept episodes of Angel. I mean, like, Angel just doesn't get high concept episodes the way that Buffy does.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
you tend to get like just arc episodes. Yeah. Rarely do you get, like, we have the one obviously where to lose Angel's soul, they do the mission in season 4. Remember that, where they go into his memory? Basically, they de-ensoul him by bringing him through a whole pleasure thing, etc. That's kind of like the highest concept episode otherwise of Angel, right?
Yeah, 100%. There's nothing else that really jumps out in quite the same way. It's one episode where Cordelia lives a different life for a bit. You know, that was kind of alternate history kind of thing.
Yeah, they showed the Cordelia show, which was kind of funny.
Yeah, Cordy. But yeah, so in this, essentially, they there's some kids who are being drained of their energy, and they eventually discover that there's a popular Muppets-esque TV show called Smile Time with Muppet-esque puppets that is linked into this. Angel goes to confront the situation, and in if you think about it, really never explained reason. Because he goes to find this like magic sinister egg. There's a man sitting underneath it with a towel on his head who says you shouldn't be here, and Angel gets zapped by it and is turned into a puppet. None of that really is ever actually explained, but it's kind of, we don't care, yeah? And then for the rest of the episode, we have Angel played by a custom puppet of Angel as little David Boreanaz. And it is just very funny. They really play through the whole spectrum of how many gags can we get out of this. We have him fighting with Spike at one point. We have him being savaged by Nina, who is the werewolf from previous episodes here, and that is kind of a weird romantic situation they're developing. We have him, a hero shot of him and the Fan Gang walking into battle, and him carrying an oversized sword on his shoulders. It was all great stuff in there. Some very vulgar puppets which turn out to be inhabited by demons, and the kicker is that they think that the guy who created the show, who's a Jim Henson standing, is the demon, but in fact he made a deal with the devil to get the show back on the air, and the puppets are the demons. And there's a really horrific sequence where you see them puppeteering him by putting their hand up his back.
Who's actually David Fury, who's
the producer of Angel,
and wrote a lot of Buffy episodes.
A lot of Buffy episodes as well, and also Joss Whedon's father was involved with the Jim Henson Company. And he has a family background in the puppet business. And the people who puppeteered the three or four puppets in this show are all mainstay Muppet performers.
I have so little respect for people whose parents are in the biz and then go around and be like,
try to portray as like, the rags to riches kind of thing. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, go on.
Yeah, so I think Joss Whedon Senior, I think potentially his father is Joss as well, or the equivalent. But anyway, his father was involved with the Henson Company, which is where kind of a lot of this concept purportedly gestated from. So it's almost like a not a lot to say about it beyond that, other than it's just great comedy throughout.
It's like it's kind of scary. The puppet stuff is kind of scary and spooky.
Yeah,
you made the
weirdly
point
sexual with the children at some points as well.
Yeah, and you made the point that it's very similar to Candle Cove in what you call that, Channel Zero, that season.
Yeah, so it's very creepypasta. So Candle Cove, which is the original creepypasta written by Chris Straub, which was the basis for the show Channel Zero season 1, which we've mentioned before, but it's essentially like a weird, slightly upsetting or unsettling children's program that you don't quite remember and only seem to be on at midnight, that kind of vibe.
And also Control and Alan Wake.
So that kind of exactly that kind of urban legend, kind of weird twisted children's thing. So like there's no fat really on this episode. There's kind of there's even there's two subplots in here. There's the Nina thing, and also the thing about Gung losing some of his abilities that he got from the senior partners. So he rubber stamps through something for the evil doctor to get this fixed, which turns out to be very significant for the next episode and to Freg's ultimate fate. But yeah, it's like people make plushies of this puppet, you know, and at the end we have Angel vamping out and the puppet gets a vamp face, and it's the whole thing. It seems like, it's almost like, I don't want to say it seems obvious, because it's not obvious, but it's a simple idea executed very well, and all the main cast are doing their best comic through the whole thing. Yeah,
and then at the end of the episode you have Fred and Wesley finally kissing and having a moment together. Yeah. It's very upsetting, given the faith. Fred is going to be essentially killed in the next episode. Well, no, absolutely killed. She dies
so the next episode actually is even more upsetting than I remember, because it's the whole episode her essentially knowing she's going to die and them trying to save her, and her like almost like having a terminal illness or something. You know? So that's the whole thing. So of course in this episode we finally have Wesley and Fred being together in some kind of happy manner. But anyway, this episode is, on the Angel scale, 10 out of 10 for me, I think.
Cool, I'm going to give it 9 felt feminist gestures. I don't think it's quite as good as I Will Remember You or something like that, you know? That's
fair. Those are the Greek serious episodes, and this is, like, for me, one of the best episodes of Angel. Yeah. I always like that Angel is a show that can be very funny, and I think Dave Boreanaz's capacity for humor is what makes the show have the longevity that it had. A personal 10 out of 10 for me. I just really loved it all the time.
Fair, okay. I think at that we can finish for this week, right?
We can indeed, and we have both of our boys here in the room as well, helping with the monitor the podcast levels.
Yeah, we have a cat curled up on a seat and a dog curled up on the couch.
So with that, we'll wrap up. Thank you as always for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please let us know. Tell your friends. Tell the puppets right behind you.
Me.
And we will see you next time. right here on Buffy Boys.
See, is. I should have made a Meat Puppets reference. Meat Puppets are the best. Oh.